Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Taos United Community Church. We are very excited today because Lucy Whyte Ferguson and Alan Ferguson are going to be presenting their message to us today, which I've been waiting for a long time. So, yay. So we're going to do a little bit differently. First, welcome. No matter what you believe or what you used to believe or what you may someday believe, this house of prayer belongs to you, and we're so glad you're here. And if this is your first time, which it is for a couple of us, next door we have some, goodies. I used to say tea and crumpets. I don't know. Goodies. And we always gather there for a little bit to just check in. So it'd be nice if you'd like to stay so we could get to know you better. Wonderful. Okay. The only announcement that I have listed is Linda. Would you like to speak, Linda?
Thank you to everybody who helped us pick up trash. I do have to say, it was a way harder job than any of us were prepared for. And we didn't have very many people, so we did not quite get finished. We still have about a quarter-mile stretch. But out of that, the rest of it, 24 bags. And we got incredibly lucky. As we were working, a municipal worker, a county worker came by and stopped his truck and congratulated us and then said, "Do you want us to come pick up the bags?" And it was like, thank you, Jesus. And so we hope that happened. But Scott and I are headed down that way today. So if they're still there, my heart's going to be broken. But I will call the county. But again, thank you. And just a heads up, it is hard. It was hard work. So anybody that volunteers, you should know it's going to be difficult. But the more people, the easier it is. Thanks.
And those plastic, yes.
I got one as well.
Sure, great. And those plastic bottles are really sneaky. They hide.
Oh my God.
They hide. Go ahead, Scott.
And I found a deer carcass. I couldn't figure out how to put it in the bag, so it's still sitting there. Anyway. So last Sunday we took up our collection for Strengthen the Church, one of the funds of the United Church of Christ. And we brought in $770, which is really amazing. Thank you to all of you for your generosity. And we won't be sending the check to UCC probably till the very early part of July. So if you still want to submit a gift for the Strengthen the Church Fund, please do so. Thank you.
Thanks. So two other things. Excuse me. I sent out a couple of handouts to people who are on our email list, and one of them is the report of the Search and Call Committee, and the other one is a description of a lay leadership model that we're going to be discussing right after church today. So what we're going to ask you to do is go grab something to eat and then come back, and I think. Yeah. Anyway, we'll decide that at the very end. But we have a little church discussion to have. So let's get here. I left my phone on top of my car as I was leaving the house today, so I'm a little frazzled. I did find it about a quarter mile up the road, but I'm very lucky. But I'm a little frazzled, so I need a few deep breaths. Let's settle into our seats and close our eyes and take a deep breath. Breathing in this cool, loving air that we are in right now. And breathing out anything that distracts us. Breathing in, breathing out.
I'm going to read a fairly long poem that to me is like a prayer. So we decided to consolidate the prelude and the prayer this morning together. And this poem was written by Lila June Johnston. And Lila feels to me like a goddaughter because I was invited to her coming of age ceremony. She's Diné, half Diné, but Diné, and she went through the coming of age ceremony for a young woman in her tradition, and the entire community came out for most of a week to help with all the preparation, and they stayed up all night in the Hogan, and they sang and told stories, and it was just one of the most powerful, beautiful ceremonies, and it was all to recognize her coming through. And this is a poem of hers that I really love. It is called Dawn. It is dawn. The sun is conquering the sky, and my grandmother and I are heaving prayers at the horizon. Show me something unbeautiful, she says, and I will show you the veil over your eyes and take it away, and you will see how Hojo all around you, inside of you. This morning she is teaching me the meaning of Hojo. There is no direct translation from Diné Bazad, the Navajo language, into English, but everything being knows what Hojo means. Hojo is every drop of rain, every eyelash, every leaf on every tree, every feather on the bluebird's wing. Hojo is undeniable beauty. Hojo is in every breath that we give to the trees and in every breath they give us in return. Hojo is reciprocity. My grandmother knows the meaning of Hojo well, for she speaks a language that grew out of the desert floor like red sandstone monoliths that rise like arms out of the earth, praising creation for all its brilliance. Hojo is remembering that you are a part of this brilliance. It is finally accepting that, yes, you are a sacred song that brings the Dien Diné, the gods, to their knees in an almost unbearable ecstasy. Hojo is remembering your own beauty. My grandmother knows Hojo well, for she speaks the language of a Luka Chukai snowstorm, the sound of hooves hitting the earth on birthdays, for my grandmother is a midwife, and she is fluent in the language of suffering mothers, of joyful mothers, of handing glowing newborns to their creator. Hojo is not something that you can experience on your own. The eagles tell us as they lock talons in the stratosphere and fall to the earth as one. Hojo is interbeauty. My grandmother knows Hojo well, for she speaks the language of the male rain that shoots lightning boys through the sky and pummels the green corn children and huddles the horses against cliffsides in the afternoon. She also speaks the language of the female rain that sends the scent of dust and sage into our homes and shoots rainbows out of and into the earth. The Diné know what Hojo means, and you know what Hojo means. And deep down, we know what Hojo is not. Like the days you walk in sadness, and the days you live for money, and the days you live for fame, and the days you live for tomorrow. Like the day the Spaniards came and climbed down from their horses and asked if they could buy the mountains. We knew this was not Hojo, but we knew we could make it Hojo once again. So we took their swords and their silver coins and melted them with fire and buffalo hide bellows and reshaped them into squash blossom jewelry pieces and strung it around their necks. Took the helmet straight off their heads and turned it into fearless beauty. Hojo is the healing of broken bones. Hojo is the prayer that carried us through genocide and disease. It is the prayer that will carry us through global warming and through the global fear that has set our hearts on fire. This morning, my grandmother is teaching me that the easiest and most elegant way to defeat an army of hatred is to sing it beautiful songs. And until it falls to its knees and surrenders. It will do this, she says, because it has finally found a sweeter fire than revenge. It has found heaven. It has found Hojo. This morning, my grandmother is saying to the colors of the sky at dawn, Hojo Nahatsli, Hojo Nahatsli, Hojo Nahatsli. Beauty is restored again. It is dawn, my friends. Wake up, for the night is over. Thank you.
Can we just take another moment and return to that place of beauty that you just read to us? As the Spirit of the Lord moved over the waters, Spirit of God, move over us. Be still.
In the same way that in the beautiful reading, she pointed out what wasn't Hojo. The Spaniards coming. We see a lot that isn't, especially today in the United States. And so Alan and Lucy have asked us to sing this song. When America went to war in 1941 in World War II, they were short workers, extremely short workers, particularly in the fields and the orchards. And so they started a program where they imported immigrants from Mexico called the Bracero program. When the war was over and soldiers came back, they decided they didn't need a lot of them. Many of them had children here, they had families here, but they deported them, many of them. And over the years that has continued, and so as soon as we're done with people, then we chase them out. There was a group of these deportees in 1948 who were loaded on a plane, and the plane crashed in California in Los Gatos Canyon. And Woody Guthrie, folk singer during the era, noticed that in all of the radio and television news reports, they referred to the 4 American crew by name. and everybody else was nameless, and they called them deportees. So as you light candles, we're going to sing this song. We're going to teach you the chorus. And so we'll run through the chorus a couple of times, and then we'll ask you to come up and light a candle for those things on your heart. We do this every week. We bring our requests. I was raised Catholic, and when you lit a devotional candle with a prayer, it was believed that the prayer continues to heaven for as long as that candle burns. So come with your prayers, but before you do, we're going to teach you this song. We'll start with the chorus, and then we'll go to the verses.
Bye to my one, goodbye Rosalita, adios mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have your names when you ride the big airplane, and all they will call you will be deportees. Do that again.
Goodbye, Rosalita.
Goodbye, Rosalita.
Adios, mis amigos.
Adios, mis
Jesus y Maria.
Jesus y Maria.
You won't have your names
You won't have your
when you
names
ride the
when
big
you
airplane,
ride the big
and all they will call you
all
will be
they will
deportees.
call you will be.
Let's do that one more time.
Goodbye to my one, goodbye Rosalita.
Adios, mis amigos.
Adios, mis amigos.
Jesus y Maria.
Jesus y Maria.
You won't have your
You
names
won't have your
when you
name
ride the
when
big
you
airplane,
ride the big airplane.
and all they will call you
All they will call
will be
you
deportees.
will be deportees.
Let's do it one more time. Goodbye to my one, goodbye
Rosalita, adios mis
Jesus y Maria.
Jesus y
You won't have your
Maria.
names
Won't have your
when
name
you ride the big airplane,
ride the big airplane.
and all they will call you
All they will call
be
you
deportees.
will be deportees.
So please come up and light your candles with your prayers. The crops are all in, and the peaches are rotting. The oranges pile in their creosote dumps. They're flying them back to the Mexican border to pay all their money to wade back again. My father's own father, he waded that river. They took all the money he made in his life. My brothers and sisters come work in the fruit trees, and they rode the trucks till they took down and died. Goodbye to my one, goodbye Rosalita, adios mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have your names when you ride the big airplane, and all they will call you will be deportees. Some of us are illegal, and some are not wanted. Our work contract's out and we have to move on. 600 miles to the Mexican border. They chase us like outlaws, like rustlers and thieves. Goodbye to my one, goodbye Rosalita, adios mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have your names when you ride the big airplanes, and all they will call you will be deportees. Well, we died in your hills, we died in your deserts, we We died in your valleys and died on your plains. We died neath your trees and we died in your bushes. Both sides of the river, we died just the same. Goodbye to my one, goodbye Rose. Adios, mis amigos. Jesus y Maria. You won't have your names when you ride the big airplane. And all they will call you will be deportees. The sky plane caught fire over Los Gatos Canyon. A fireball of lightning that shook all our hills. Who are all these friends all scattered like dry leaves? The radio says they are just deportees. Goodbye to my one, goodbye Rose. Adios, mi amigos.
Adios, mis.
Jesus y Maria.
Jesus y
You won't have your names
You won't have your
when you ride the big airplane. The big air, and all they will call you.
All they will
call you will be deportees. Is this the best way we can grow our big orchards? Is this the best way we can grow our good fruit? To fall like dry leaves, to rot in our topsoil, and be called by no name except deportees. Goodbye to my one, goodbye Rosalita. Adios, mis amigos. Jesus y Maria. You won't have your names when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be deportees. Goodbye to my one, goodbye Rosalita. Adios, mis amigos. Jesus y Maria. You won't have your name when you ride the big airplane. And all they will call you will be deportees. All they will call you will be deportees. Yes.
Perfect. Good morning, friends and neighbors. Let us hear now from Mark Twain, particularly selections from his war prayer, written in 1905, published posthumously in 1910. O Lord, our Father, our young patriots, idols of our hearts, go forth to battle. Be thou near them, with them in spirit. We also go forth from the sweet peace of our beloved firesides to smite the foe. O Lord our God, help us to tear their soldiers to bloody shreds with our shells. Help us to cover their smiling fields with the pale forms of their patriot dead. Help us to drown the thunder of the guns with the shrieks of their wounded writhing in pain. Help us to lay waste to their humble homes with hurricanes of fire. Help us to wring the hearts of their unoffending widows with unavailing grief. Help us to turn them out roofless with their little children to wander the unfriended wastes of the desolated land in rags and hunger and thirst, sports of the sun, flames of summer, and the icy winds of winter, broken in spirit, worn with travail, imploring thee for the refuge of the grave, and denied it. For our sakes who adore thee, Lord, blight their lives, protract their bitter pilgrimage, make heavy their steps, water their way with tears, stain the white snow with the blood of their wounded feet. We ask it in the spirit of love, of Him who is the source of love, and who is the ever-faithful refuge and friend of all that are sore beset and seek His aid with humble and contrite hearts. Amen.
Morning. And now for something totally different. My reading today is Art is a Way, Struggle, Loss, and Black Living by Imani Perry. These are excerpts from Times Magazine editorial on May 12th, 2025. Toni Morrison concluded the essay she wrote for The Nation. I know the world is bruised and bleeding, and though it is important not to ignore its pain, it is also critical to refuse to succumb to its malevolence. Like failure, chaos contains information that can lead to knowledge, even wisdom, like art. Morrison's remarkable courage is a reminder that the value of art in these times is much greater than how it might inspire people to action alone. It exists in art power to allow us to find meaning, notwithstanding mourning, to imagine our way out of the morass of our present moment or personal challenges, and to keep us living rather than frozen in fear and anguish. Art helps us to refresh culture, but also keep tradition alive. That combination allows us to more deeply contemplate our condition, to meditate on that which would be right and good. Most of all, it helps us find and nourish love. Love is indeed in need of love today, for our children, for all of us.
Good morning. Good morning. I am already very moved by what I hoped would move all of you, and it has me in tears as well. So I'm going to take a moment and blow my nose here. Today's message is part one of our messages for this congregation. I will focus on what we learned during the Vietnam era about how to maintain our morality and integrity as we resist the current forces of repression. When Alan wrote the paragraphs about what he wants to share with this congregation, we realized that he had so much important material that he would present his message next month, July 20th. He wrote a whole bunch of paragraphs, and as we set them out, we thought, oh my gosh, this is a whole other talk. So Alan's message will focus on how we examine the actions of our government in order to seek to encourage the integrity of our nation in its role in the world, especially with regard to international law of war and peace, a topic he has studied and taught about for decades, among other topics that he will cover. But stay tuned for that. So my early inspiration in political activism was incredibly enhanced by Daniel Berrigan, who was a Jesuit priest. He was a chaplain who led the religious programs in the religious center, a coffee house at the religious center at Cornell University. He told us he believed that it was his purpose in life to seek out the place of the greatest darkness and stand for the light. And that phrase has stuck with me ever since. And we were very naive and trusting and thought, the world was wonderful at first, but he brought Guatemalan nuns to speak to us in that coffee house. They told us about the killings of their sister nuns by military police in Guatemala, who were trained in the U.S. School of the Americas. We eventually learned that the police who conducted those heinous actions, disappearances and assassinations in Guatemala, as well as El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, Brazil, Chile, and Argentina, were trained in this school in the U.S. In 1968, Father Berrigan performed an act of civil disobedience. He and 8 others, including his brother, poured homemade napalm on draft files in Catonsville, Maryland. And they burned them. He was one of the Catonsville 9, and he was tried and convicted of destroying government property and of interference with the Selective Service Act of 1967. From Cornell University, he actually went underground for several months because he expressed the concern that the tensions were so high at that point that he was afraid the government might kill him if they had him in their jails. He eventually served several months in jail. While many of our generation were in college, we had to face the issue of the draft. Fellow students were considering draft resistance, trying to arrange to be classified 4F, not fit for service, such as having heel spurs. Leaving for Canada, and still others, including Alan, followed their spiritual and religious values to become conscientious objectors to war. They performed alternative service. We also knew family members, classmates, and friends who were drafted, some of whom died. As I graduated from Cornell University and Alan graduated from Antioch College, we each knew fellow students who were ready to blow things up, and they planned to join the Weather Underground. Others dropped out and moved to rural or urban communes. So things were going in all kinds of different directions, all at the same time. We each were challenged by the direction to decide what direction our lives would take, what demonstrations we would participate in, what acts of civil disobedience we would take part in, whether or not we were prepared to go to jail. We had to make similar decisions throughout the following years as both Alan and I separately went to Berkeley and San Francisco area. We met at a meeting of the Medical Committee for Human Rights in Berkeley, and we participated in a demonstration and information table outside a local hospital, demanding that the hospital emergency room provide treatment to the residents of the surrounding community regardless of the ability to pay. This is just one of the many issues we were passionate about and that we supported and or demonstrated about. When I look back on this, I sometimes wonder how we weren't just totally exhausted all the time. We knew the Vietnam War was wrong. We found out that the Gulf of Tonkin that precipitated the war was a fraud. Also, there was a lot of deception involved in the war. So that was one of the things that really affected how we felt about our government and the war, such as inflating the deaths of the other side so that we could make it seem as though we were winning. And this was systematically observed and cataloged, and we found out about it somewhat delayed manner. They also did something which shows sort of the hypocrisy of the terms that were used. There was a pacification program. Now, the pacification program involved deciding that the next area that they wanted to go into and conquer, that they would send out leaflets and communicate however they thought they were going to be able to communicate, and that all the people who were not warring factions would be told they should leave, they should get out of that area. And then the American troops would be told that since everyone who was still in the area had disobeyed their orders, then they were fair game as the objects of the war. And I don't know for sure, but I expect that some of the problems with the killings of civilians came from just that. I mean, we know from, the hurricane in New Orleans that you can't just tell people that they need to go and they're all going to go, even when they think their very life is at stake. It doesn't always work that way. So it was a crazy, crazy time as far as the war itself was concerned. We also knew about the plight of immigrant farm workers in California, and we supported the attempt to unionize. We were concerned about racial strife and stood against the attempts to repress groups organizing to help the Black and poor populace. We were concerned about the plan to build a nuclear power plant very near the San Andreas Fault. We were also starting to learn about global warming and the ravages of big oil. I was involved in numerous groups organizing for women's rights during the burgeoning feminist movement in Berkeley. And before I arrived in Berkeley, Alan participated in the People's Park actions to take over unused Berkeley University land and create a park of peace and love. And that effort was violently repressed by the authorities. And that's in Alan's novel. Anyway, many times over the years, we had to decide what demonstrations and civil disobedience we wanted to participate in. Were we willing to be arrested? Just a second. We were not wanting to commit destructive acts, and each of us had a young child to care for. For me, biblical sayings did not provide the guidance I needed. As a feminist, I could not see myself surrendering to a higher power. It just didn't work. But I realized that the closest that I could come in my way was that I could access the perspective I needed if I humbled myself and considered that I was at the same level as all other humans, animals, plants, all the other energies on the planet and the near universe. I asked from this perspective what actions or thoughts were in harmony with all that is and what were not. I now see that this is a horizontal kind of spiritual connection rather than a vertical hierarchical spiritual connection. And this perspective includes recognizing the beauty all around us and of which we are a part. This spiritual perspective worked for me, and it helped me to decide what felt right in each situation or movement. And this is very like the perspective in Lila Johnston's poem, Hojo. As a matter of fact, that probably could be the whole message today, was that poem. It became important to me to find ways to feel and discharge my anger and despair, but to not put out hatred or to wish for bad outcomes for my opponents. I believed that the evil that I sent out would also inevitably come back to me or be tied to me, and it would make it impossible to maintain my integrity. Once we offered space to a coworker who was ill. Her large dogs ate a lot and tore up our yard to a degree. I'll add one crazy additional thing here that I hadn't actually planned to, but the reason that she couldn't go on assistance while she was ill was because she had a gold Jaguar, which was what she got out of her divorce. And her ex-husband was a mechanic, so she couldn't get rid of the gold Jaguar because she needed to get around and her ex would fix it. And so we stepped in and took her in for a period of time. But when it became time that wasn't working anymore, we asked her to leave, and she promised that when she got on her feet and was making some money again, she would pay us back for all the dog food that we had supplied for her and her two big dogs. But when the time came, I got in touch with her, and I knew she was doing much better. She wasn't ill anymore, and she was making some money. And she basically made no plans to return any of the funds. And interestingly enough, I started to get sick. And someone that I knew and trusted counseled me that I just had to let go of what I felt I was owed, that was keeping me tied in with her energy, and that was not good for me. And it's one of the ways that I learned how much our energies are affected by what we put out and what we expect back and all of that. And I did quickly get well as soon as I let go of the feeling that I was owed anything, and never did receive anything in return. Once we were involved in a conflict, and someone I trusted suggested that I had to make sure that my anger at that person, and I was very furious at that person, did not turn into a wish for harm. My advisor suggested that I could pray that the light of truth would come into the person's life. And I did that very assiduously. Every time I felt like, I would just pray that the light of truth would come into their life. And this did feel in harmony with my integrity. And it may have helped actually change the outcome of the conflict, because things kind of shifted and things worked out the best they could for us in the situation. Now, I also want to speak about the fact that there are many conflicts that can come up when we are fearful, when we're angry, when we may be in groups that we care about, but things may break down under the stresses of the actual situations that we're dealing with. It seems also that it seemed in that time, even though we wanted to create radical change and a revolution, everybody knew what the right way was. Each person thought, my way is the right way, and your way is not the right way, and this is the right way, and that's the wrong way. I think this kind of stress occurs when there is a time of upheaval and people unwittingly displace their fears and hurts onto others, project them in that way. It's hard to pick that out during the Trump time because the tensions are so, daily. The things that shock us, the things that hurt us continue on a daily basis. But I could easily identify it in my practice when 9/11 happened. Not only were my patients much more tense, especially everybody had rocks here at the base of their necks. It was incredible tension. But there was suddenly conflict in marriages, in the boards of nonprofits, in the groups running charter schools, just about any group around that I would hear about. Suddenly there were big blow-ups and things that had not happened previously. And I really, really think it was because even though we were not at the site of 9/11, we were all deeply affected by that fear and anguish that resulted after that time. So I'm going to present some thoughts or ideas that relate to that. An example from my time in Berkeley, I participated in a co-op child care center known as the Derby Dump. It was a several-story old building that we painted and fixed up and had for our children, and we took turns. We had schedules, and we took care of the children. I had worked with the other parents for many months. My son Jason, who was about 2.5, would come and play, and he would pick up toys. And these two girls who were somewhat bigger than Jason would come over, and one would grab him by the suspenders of his overalls, and the other would take the toy that he'd been playing with, and they would go off and play with the toy that he had. And when I saw that happening almost on a daily basis, I talked to some of the other parents because I thought that the children were old enough that we could teach them how to share and take turns. Now, the two moms of those two little girls told me that my son just had to learn how to buck up and stand up for himself because they didn't want someone coming down on their daughters. They were trying to raise revolutionary daughters. That was the time. That was what we were about. And of course, I was trying to raise a gentle son. And it didn't stop there. We had a meeting, and it was decided in that meeting that I was just not revolutionary enough to continue to participate in the play group. So I and my son were kicked out of that group. And interestingly enough, when I told the story to someone that I know now who's a few years older than I am, and it was in San Francisco at the time, she had also been kicked out of a play group for being not revolutionary enough. So it was not an isolated, I have no idea how much it happened, but I am amazed at how seriously we took our play groups at the time. Now, I was devastated. I knew these people well. I had worked with them. I thought I liked them. I thought they liked me. I would go over things in my head over and over again. But a trusted friend taught me a meditation to clear the bad energy that had been dumped in my energy system, because it really felt like people had dumped poison. I mean, I felt really awful and ill in the whole process. And I did have this put out. Oh, I have copies of this that I'll put at the front. It's in the back of that book, at the very back. There are 30 copies of the clearing meditation. And it also went out through your bulletins. Those of you who have email, you have it on your system already. But it's something that I have found incredibly useful over and over again in the 50 years since then. And when I have patients that are really upset with something and it really feels like something has come down on them, if I have time, I take them through the whole clearing. At least I describe it. Now I'll have a write-up of it that I can use. But one of the results is that the meditator stops endlessly replaying the events and trying to rethink, what should I have done here? What could I have done better here? So you actually get released from that, and it's really quite amazingly helpful. And it was amazingly helpful to me. Now, basically, all of this is said because I think the more we can have clear energy and the personal integrity of our energy when we decide how to enter into and participate in resistance, the better we will do. So I present these as just useful tools along those lines.
And now, as always, we'll take 2 minutes to just ponder and sit with these wonderful thoughts, and Michael will bring us out with music.